Starseed of Gaia, your vessel is being recalibrated at a cellular level at this exact moment. I am Anya, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, and I bring you a direct transmission from the Arcturian Council. If you enjoy videos like this, consider subscribing. Most people who watch are not subscribed yet. Starseed. The Arcturians confirm that a critical acceleration window is already active, and that it does not open for everyone. This is not a prophecy and not a warning. It is a confirmation of a condition that has already begun to move through the collective field, quietly, structurally, without spectacle. If you are hearing this now, it means your own field is already interacting with the window. And that is why time may feel unfamiliar lately. Why your intuition has started interrupting your thoughts instead of following them. Why certain choices suddenly feel impossible, while others feel inevitable, as if your timeline is being narrowed toward a single, more readable track. This is what acceleration does. It makes consequence arrive faster than comfort, and it makes truth arrive faster than your excuses. Some will feel it as sudden clarity. Others will feel it as pressure, restlessness, and a sense that something invisible is pushing them forward. Both reactions are the same signal. Your reality is responding more to coherence than to effort. And in this window, you cannot drift the way you used to. You can still choose, but you will feel the impact of each choice immediately. Stay present, slow your breath, let your awareness rest behind your thoughts, because what comes next is not about awakening more. It is about learning how to move correctly inside acceleration. An acceleration window is not an event you witness. It is a condition you enter. This is the first truth that stabilizes your perception. Nothing external announces it. There are no dramatic signs in the sky, no forced miracles, no theatrical ruptures. Acceleration begins internally when resistance drops below a critical threshold, when the internal tug-of-war finally weakens enough for your field to compress into a single, readable signal. Most humans were trained to believe that change comes from effort, pushing, proving, repeating, grinding outcomes into existence. The Arcturians transmit something that overturns this entire model. Acceleration windows open when effort becomes unnecessary. They do not open because you want something badly. They open because your emotional field, mental focus, and intuitive knowing stop pulling against each other. When that happens, your frequency stops scattering. It condenses. That condensation is the window. This is why acceleration feels strange at first. It often does not feel euphoric. It does not feel like constant fireworks. It can feel almost too quiet, too clean, too simple. You experience a clarity that does not require explanation. You stop needing to convince yourself. You stop needing to persuade others. You simply know what is aligned and what is not, even if you cannot explain why. Inside the window, reality stops responding to intensity and starts responding to posture. Posture is not your personality. It is not your words. It is the energetic position you hold when nothing forces you to act. It is how you respond when you are not being chased by emergencies. It is how you behave when urgency is no longer required to survive. In the old timeline, delay buffered your incoherence. You could push a choice forward. You could distract yourself for weeks. You could negotiate with misalignment and still keep moving. But in acceleration, buffering disappears. The system begins responding faster than your rationalizations. This is why many people misinterpret acceleration as pressure. They say, something feels off. But what they are sensing is not collapse. They are sensing that incoherence is no longer being padded. Old coping mechanisms stop working. Distractions lose their sedative effect. Avoidance becomes uncomfortable. You start feeling friction in places you used to numb. Nothing is wrong. The timeline is recalibrating around coherence density. The Arcturians do not measure how spiritual someone sounds. They do not measure belief. They measure readability. They observe whether your frequency can remain stable without collapsing into urgency. Because urgency is noise. Noise fragments your signal, and fragmentation contracts the window. This is the physics. It is not punishment. It is calibration. So the true instruction of topic 1 is simple, and it is not glamorous. Do not move faster. Move cleaner. Every decision inside the window carries more weight. Every misalignment echoes faster. Every compromise becomes loud. And this is why the window is a gift and a test at once. Not because you are being judged, but because you are being revealed to yourself with unprecedented clarity. Activation, acceleration, stabilization command. Type this exactly. I choose coherence over urgency. As you write it, do not hunt for sensation. Notice instead the subtle shift, a quiet settling behind the eyes, a soft drop in internal pressure, a little more space between thought and reaction. This is stabilization. This is the posture acceleration responds to. The moment the window opens, it begins to test coherence, not aggressively, not theatrically, but precisely. These tests are not obstacles. They are measurements. They reveal whether alignment is stable or only temporary, whether your coherence is embodied or merely situational. The first test is false urgency. Nothing is truly wrong, and yet your system feels the impulse to act, message someone, decide immediately, fix something, explain yourself, chase closure. This is not intuition. This is leftover conditioning. Acceleration removes the delay buffer, so old urgency patterns rise to the surface where you can finally see them clearly. The measurement is simple. Can you remain still when nothing is actually demanding movement? If you react, coherence collapses. If you pause, coherence strengthens. Acceleration does not reward speed. It rewards discernment. The second test is the return of old patterns. You may suddenly see old cravings, old triggers, old distractions, old emotional loops show up again. People misread this as regression. It is not regression. It is exposure. The system is bringing forward what no longer fits the new frequency. The question is not whether you have the thought. The question is whether you identify with it, whether you feed it, whether you rebuild a home inside an energy you already outgrew. The Arcturians transmit. Timelines close when identity clings backward. Timelines stabilize when identity releases quietly. The third test is social misalignment. Conversations feel off. Interactions feel heavy. Certain dynamics suddenly feel draining, not because others changed, but because you did. And the test is not to judge anyone. The test is not to isolate dramatically. The test is posture. Can you remain neutral without shrinking? Can you remain present without explaining yourself? Can you allow distance without guilt? Silent boundaries are one of the strongest coherence signals. Over-explaining is often urgency disguised as kindness. The fourth test is over-interpretation. As sensitivity increases, the mind wants to label everything as a sign. Every coincidence becomes a message. Every emotion becomes a prophecy. Every sensation becomes a symbol. This is a trap. Acceleration amplifies perception, but clarity requires restraint. The measurement is, can you perceive without narrating? Can you observe without attaching meaning too quickly? The Arcturians do not communicate through symbols first. They communicate through field response. The fifth test is the temptation to force the next step. You feel aligned, you feel clear, and the mind whispers, act now. But acceleration does not require immediate action. It requires correct timing. If you force, you lock a timeline prematurely. If you wait in coherence, the system moves first and you move second, and that is how effortless momentum is built. The sixth test is emotional waves without story. You might feel sadness without reason, relief without cause, tension that dissolves quickly. This is purification. The measurement is, can you feel without explaining? When you force a story onto emotion too fast, you recreate resistance. When you allow emotion to move without narrative, the window strengthens. The seventh test is silence. Moments where nothing happens. No insight, no sign, no movement. This silence is not absence. It is calibration. The measurement is, can you remain present without stimulation? Those who chase stimulation generate noise. Noise collapses coherence. Those who rest inside stillness become readable. Activation, coherence under pressure command. Type this exactly. I remain coherent when nothing pushes me. Notice the breath slow. Notice a quiet strength in the chest. This is how the window stays open. The ebook, The 12 Arcturian Portals, a trilogy that teaches you how to activate your 5D connection with the Arcturian masters through 12 energetic portals. Practical techniques, activation protocols, and rituals that awaken your stellar DNA. From amplified intuition to direct communication with spiritual guides. Attention, limited edition. The link to get your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. There is a precise moment when the window changes its behavior. Until now, it has been measuring how you respond. Once coherence proves stable, acceleration stops testing and begins guiding. Nothing external announces this transition. No dramatic confirmation appears. What changes is the way reality meets you. When acceleration is testing, life applies pressure without instruction. Situations arise without clarity. Silence feels heavy. Choices feel ambiguous. But when acceleration begins guiding, pressure dissolves and direction appears, not as a voice, not as a command, but as a quiet gravitational pull toward what is clean. The first sign of guidance is clarity through elimination. You may not know exactly what to do, but you suddenly know what not to do. Options lose energy. Certain paths feel hollow. Conversations that once seemed necessary feel irrelevant. Guidance closes doors without drama. It does not push you. It pulls you. It makes coherence feel lighter than effort. As the Arcturians transmit, guidance is not the future speaking. Guidance is your field becoming readable enough that reality can respond efficiently. This is when intuition stops interrupting thought and becomes the default orientation. You sense timing before logic arrives. You feel when to speak and when silence is correct. You feel when waiting preserves momentum and when action is clean. Synchronicity also changes function. Earlier synchronicities may have felt like signs. Now they become alignment feedback. They do not excite you, they orient you. A delay prevents misaligned action. A conversation appears exactly when clarity is needed. A path closes before you waste effort. Nothing feels random, but nothing feels dramatic. It feels efficient. Emotions also refine. During testing, emotions rise to clear density. During guidance, emotions become quieter and more precise. Discomfort signals misalignment. Ease signals coherence. Neutrality signals correct timing. There is less intensity and more accuracy. This is emotional intelligence recalibrated for acceleration. Decision-making becomes clean. Decisions feel final without drama, calm without doubt, firm without rigidity. You stop revisiting choices internally, not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because the field confirms posture. And here is the paradox. As acceleration deepens, life often becomes quieter, not louder. You do less, but what you do lands. You speak less, but what you say carries weight. You plan less, but what unfolds feels inevitable. The mind can grow suspicious because it was trained to associate movement with struggle. But ease is not avoidance. Ease is often correct interaction. The Arcturians do not lead you like a ruler. They stabilize the field so guidance becomes obvious. They reduce noise so perception sharpens. They amplify coherence so intuition becomes reliable. They do not interfere. They make misalignment uncomfortable enough that guidance becomes the only sustainable option. Activation. Guidance, receptivity command. Type this exactly. I allow acceleration to guide my movement. If this message ignited something within you and you feel the call to help carry it to others, you may become a channel member. As a member, you gain access to custom emojis and exclusive members-only videos, and your donation helps us continue building this sacred space. You may also choose to leave your offering as a super thanks. Every seed planted here becomes part of someone else's miracle. Your support is not merely financial, but an act of energetic amplification. All donations are devoted entirely to the maintenance of the channel and the creation of new transmissions and videos. There comes a point where guidance stops only influencing your inner state and begins reorganizing your external reality. This is when acceleration becomes visible, not chaotic, not dramatic, but unmistakable. Your timeline can no longer remain fragmented. It must reorganize to match your coherence. This is not destiny changing. This is misaligned timelines releasing their grip. From the human perspective, it may feel sudden. Plans unravel without conflict. Relationships drift without explanation. Opportunities disappear without resistance. But this is not loss. This is subtraction. Guidance does not add complexity. It removes interference. The Arcturians transmit that acceleration restructures timelines by removing what no longer resonates, not by forcing something new into place. This is how you can tell the difference between endings and extractions. Endings tend to feel emotional. Extractions feel clean. When guidance restructures your timeline, things do not explode. They simply lose energy. You stop wanting to fix. You stop needing closure. You stop replaying conversations. The situation ends because the field no longer feeds it. If something leaves without drama, it was already complete. A confusing part of this stage is the gap. Humans expect replacement. When something ends, they demand an immediate substitute. But acceleration often creates space first. Space is not emptiness. Space is bandwidth. Your schedule loosens. Your identity feels less defined. Silence increases. This is not stagnation. This is timeline plasticity. The reality field becoming flexible so a more accurate sequence can form. The mind struggles because it was trained to identify itself through continuity. When continuity breaks, it searches for explanation. But guidance does not explain. It repositions. This is why you might feel detached from old goals, unmotivated by former rewards, calm without direction. This calm is not emptiness. It is recalibration. Another signature of restructuring is the subtle emergence of the future self. Not visually, not as imagination, but energetically. You respond with maturity you did not rehearse. You decline paths you would have chased. You speak with certainty you did not plan. This is timeline convergence. A stable future version of you begins informing present decisions. Synchronicity becomes structural. Meetings occur at precise timing. Obstacles prevent misaligned movement. Opportunities appear without effort. Nothing feels magical. It feels efficient. And you will notice something else. Some areas speed up while others freeze. That is not random. Acceleration applies momentum where coherence exists and removes motion where distortion remains. If something slows, it is being reevaluated. If something accelerates, it has already been approved. One of the hardest lessons here is non-action. Action taken too early locks timelines prematurely. Waiting is not delay. Waiting is precision timing. Those who rush recreate fragmentation. Those who trust restraint emerge with clean trajectories. Activation, timeline, restructuring, stabilization. Command. Type this exactly. I allow guidance to reorganize my timeline. Are these truths expanding your perspective? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Inside every acceleration window, there is a threshold where return is no longer possible. Not because something blocks you, but because coherence reaches a density that cannot collapse back into fragmentation. This is irreversibility, and it rarely looks like victory. It often looks like calm. Humans think irreversibility comes from decision. The Arcturians transmit that it comes from frequency stabilization. You do not decide to cross this point. You arrive at it. It occurs when coherence has been held long enough that the system reorganizes permanently around it. Alignment stops being something you maintain through effort and becomes your default state. One of the clearest markers of irreversibility is the sudden failure of resistance. You may try to return to old habits, old distractions, old reactions, but they no longer provide relief. Not because you are disciplined, but because they feel incompatible. This is frequency mismatch. The system no longer feeds what no longer fits. Right at the edge of irreversibility, the mind may panic, not always with fear, but with nostalgia. It remembers versions of you that felt simpler, less precise, less responsible. It searches for familiar comfort, but familiarity is no longer safety. If you do not cling to it, the transition completes silently. This is the surprising truth. Irreversibility feels normal. You wake up and realize you are no longer negotiating with yourself. You are no longer rehearsing decisions. You are no longer seeking confirmation. You simply move or do not move without inner conflict. Another marker is that the old timeline stops reacting to you. Attempts to revive old dynamics fall flat. Old environments feel distant, not painful. Irrelevant. It is not rejection. It is completion. You have exited the feedback loop. Guidance also becomes ambient. Before irreversibility, guidance arrives in moments. After irreversibility, guidance becomes the atmosphere. Thought aligns around intuition instead of battling it. You do not ask what is right. You feel when something is off. Correction becomes immediate. For some, this stage can feel lonely for a short time, not because you are above anyone, but because fewer people meet you at this frequency. Small talk feels hollow. Over-explaining feels unnecessary. Validation feels irrelevant. This is not separation. It is divergence. And it must be honored, not forced closed. The window does not close. It locks. Acceleration stops being something you are inside. It becomes the structure of how your life unfolds. Misalignment creates immediate feedback. Reality responds faster than thought. Identity stabilizes without effort. This is integration, activation, irreversibility, anchor command. Type this exactly. I remain aligned beyond the point of return. If you are here now, the acceleration window has already done its work, not by changing who you are, but by removing what you are no longer able to inhabit. Living beyond the window does not feel like constant ascension. It feels like stability. You stop feeling like you are moving toward something and start feeling like you are living from what is already true. What remains is not intensity. What remains is orientation. You wake up inside your life already aligned. Decisions arise cleanly. Misalignment is felt instantly. Correction happens without struggle. You no longer wait for signs because your field becomes the reference point. This is also where you stop proving. You stop narrating your evolution. You stop defending choices. Not because others would not understand, but because explanation can fragment coherence. Truth does not need witnesses. It needs consistency. Many expect guidance to feel louder here, but the opposite often happens. Guidance seems to disappear because it merges with perception. You are not being guided toward alignment. You are acting from alignment. There is no separation. Intuition does not speak in sentences. It orients you like gravity, and yet, even beyond the window, coherence still matters. Not as achievement, but as maintenance. Not through effort, but through environment. Stable fields matter. Not communities built on excitement, but spaces built on regulation, silence, precision, and embodied clarity. This is why some are drawn to deeper circles, not to be awakened, but to stay steady while life continues reorganizing around coherence. Activation. Integration seal. Type this exactly. I live from alignment without returning. The ebook, The 12 Arcturian Portals, a trilogy that teaches you how to activate your 5D connection with the Arcturian masters through 12 energetic portals. Practical techniques, activation protocols, and rituals that awaken your stellar DNA. From amplified intuition to direct communication with spiritual guides. Attention! Limited edition. The link to get your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. Now we complete the transmission with the part that most minds resist. The acceleration window is not maintained by intensity, and it is not protected by constantly doing spiritual work. It is maintained by a quiet discipline that keeps your field readable. The Arcturians transmit that readability is not about perfection, it is about signal integrity. A clean signal does not mean you never feel fear. It means you do not build a home inside fear. It means you do not let fear become your decision maker. The first discipline is precision with attention. In acceleration, your attention becomes a creative instrument. What you repeatedly attend to becomes heavier, closer, more present in your field. This means scrolling through noise is not harmless anymore. It is training. It is entrainment. It is tuning your nervous system into fragmentation. The discipline is not avoid everything. The discipline is to ask, does this increase coherence or does it scatter it? If it scatters it, you pay immediately. The second discipline is clean agreements. The window remains open when your inner knowing matches your outer behavior. When you say yes to what you internally know is misaligned, you fragment the signal. When you say no with guilt, you also fragment it. The cleanest posture is calm honesty. This is why acceleration often teaches you boundaries without conflict. You stop negotiating. You stop explaining. You stop apologizing for alignment. The third discipline is rest without collapse. Many people can be coherent while motivated. Few can be coherent while resting. But the Arcturians transmit that rest is not a pause from the path. It is part of the frequency. The nervous system must learn to be regulated without stimulation. If you can rest without binging distraction, you become profoundly readable. And the timeline responds. The fourth discipline is emotion without story. You already learned this during the tests, but here it becomes a lifestyle. Feel what arises. Let it move. Do not narrate yourself into loops. The mind loves to turn emotion into identity. This sadness means I'm broken. This anger means they wronged me. But in acceleration, emotion is often just energy moving out of the system. The discipline is to allow motion without myth. The fifth discipline is timing over impulse. Your impulses might become strong in acceleration. That does not mean they are guidance. Guidance has a specific signature. It is calm, clean, and it does not demand immediate proof. Impulse is urgent. Impulse is loud. Impulse wants relief. Guidance wants precision. The discipline is to wait long enough for urgency to dissolve. If the desire remains after urgency disappears, it is likely aligned. And now the Arcturians transmit the deepest discipline: silence as power. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is a stable field where your signal becomes unmistakable. When you stop filling space with words, explanations, or constant seeking, something extraordinary happens. You start hearing your own coherence. You start sensing the subtle yes and subtle no that were always there under the noise. This is why many people lose the window after tasting it. They rush to tell everyone. They rush to act. They rush to label the experience. They rush to monetize the feeling. But acceleration does not respond to performance. It responds to embodiment. It asks, can you hold coherence when nobody claps? Can you remain aligned when nobody confirms? Can you keep your signal clean when the old world offers you familiar distractions? If you can, the window does not just stay open, it becomes your life. And this is how the Arcturians know you are ready. Not because you can recite cosmic concepts, but because you can live them quietly. If this message impacted your life, leave your like, comment your reflection, and share with others. Each of you is part of this chain of light.